So Cisco XDR. Um, what we're trying to address, and first I will say this, so because Pat kind of alluded to it, so the term XDR, and you as customers who are probably knowledgeable around security know that it's kind of an alphabet soup of different things when we talk about security. SIM, SOAR, XDR, the terms change all the time, but just to level set on what Cisco XDR is, some of you may be aware we have had a solution for a number of years called SecureX, which you may have used in your environment to give you kind of a console into your different Cisco security technologies, possibly do some automation orchestration. That tool is going away here pretty soon, and it definitely fell in what I would call the SOAR space. So that's security orchestration, organization, security, SOAR. And when you took that tool and then kind of wanted to take that next step and move into XDR or extended detection response, we came out with the tool that we aptly named XDR. So no confusion when you talk about Cisco XDR, what is that? Like maybe some of our technologies. It is truly an XDR platform. And what we're trying to address is really what we see as the customer challenges, no matter who that customer is, whether you've got Cisco technology or some other vendor's technology. It's just things aren't getting better. I'll leave it that way. And what I'm showing on the slide here when we talk about challenges is if you look at for 2023, just those statistics of the number of organizations that were affected by ransomware, as an example, um, when we talk to or when you talk to your security teams, how do we manage the vulnerabilities? How do we manage the alerts that are coming into our environment from the different tools we have? And then also, I think it's very pertinent to call out that 83% of attacks last year were identity related. Identity is still key. So it's kind of easy to hack into an environment when you get the keys to the kingdom and people's credentials. And even things like MFA have not totally have stopped that from happening. The other thing I'll call out before I move to the next slide, that first part, 60% of attacks involve lateral movement. I would say it's probably higher than that. And even though, again, I've been doing Cisco security for many, many years, and one of the conversations we always have, and it's just hard to do, obviously, customers do a really good job, and Cisco has products, vendors have products that do a really good job of north-south security. So kind of that egress, ingress side of the network. But when it comes to having visibility and the ability to take that data and make something actionable from it from an east-west perspective, is something that's still lagging. And we feel like Cisco XDR is going to help our customers really be able to deal with that in a more effective fashion. So when we talk to SecOps teams, these are the things that typically come up. The ability to correlate across tools. I don't have a single customer that is an end-to-end Cisco security shop. Every one of my customers have security tools from different vendors. That means that people in their SecOps organization are having to go to different tools to go pull data. Doing that manually is something that is just continuing to be a non-winning proposition, I will call it. Also, how quickly can those tools help them determine where they need to provide focus? So you have multiple different individual, call it alerts, that are happening all the time in your environment. How do you and your people take those alerts and turn them into that piece of actionable information, and also prioritize those so that you're spending your time and they're spending their time where they need to at the right time? So let's get to what we need to first, right? Just because something has a high score from a security vulnerability perspective does not mean that it is the thing that your team needs to focus on most in their environment. So having a tool that can take that level of information from your environment, from the tools you have, and correlate it across a global threat landscape to give your team what they need is really what we're attempting to accomplish with our XDR platform. And then also on top of that, one of the big things, and we do this a lot with our customers that say work with our Talos organization from an IR perspective, having guidance around automated playbooks, teams that are ready when they have those incidents take place so that they know what to do are a big piece of that. And something I'll talk about at the very end before I pass it over to Chris is one of the options with our XDR platform is giving your team access to those type individuals and services that can help build that out. So specifically, since we talked about ransomware for a second, I'm letting this build out. Hopefully it's working as it builds across my bad internet connection today. But we look at ransomware. Obviously, email is the largest threat vector still. So something comes in via email, user clicks on a link that's questionable or bad, that ends up getting some piece of malware code on their machine, which then spawns off other bad things. And then it starts kind of propagating itself off the network, right? So when we look at that in most environments today, that may be 4 or 5, no telling how many different vendors and tools that are providing that events and intelligence back to your SecOps team. So when they have to then action upon those, it just makes that much harder and much more complex um, for those teams in some cases, and my customers, even to work together, I will call it. So, email may be a separate group of people than does the firewall and the VPN or the user and identity side of the environment, touching the endpoint. So even gets into how do these people in an organization share information amongst themselves. Um, we're looking for something again that can help our customers take that in. And I will clearly say and hopefully articulate this just so you hear it. This is not me saying multi-vendor is bad. That is not the case. That is never going to change. You are always going to have multiple security vendors in any customer's environment. It is more how can we as Cisco provide you with a tool that will work with all those vendors so that you can respond effectively and in a timely fashion. The other thing that we'll talk about a little bit, I know it's a little bit of a buzzword, but AI. AI is everywhere these days. You can't turn on the news without somebody talking about it. In the security world, though, it is real. If you dig in, and I'm sure you guys do with the different threat intelligence organizations that are out there. I mentioned Talos earlier, has some good blogs and stuff about how AI is being used in the kind of broader threat landscape. But this is just an example of where what we're seeing is not only what used to be nation state level attacks, where very, very, very sophisticated tools and resources were deployed and employed to make those be able to work. Now it is filtered down that AI based tools are used for everyday just kind of attacks. It is not being just done at the high level. So no matter where you are from a customer perspective, and again, everybody has different threat landscape depending upon what your industry is. But be assured that the threats that are being used and going to be used as we move forward are not going to be just people on the other side of a keyboard. It is going to be automated. It is going to be AI driven, pulling data that is all out there about your organization, our organization, and everyone else to help determine what is the best way to get Steve to respond when I send him that email and ask for his credentials or his MFA. Give me that, that token that I need. You think you won't do it, but it is getting to the point that it is harder and harder for our users to distinguish good from bad. And that's just the reality. So when we look at what Cisco's done from what we call an AI first XDR platform, and I'll kind of start on the left, what we built out that you'll see when Chris kind of goes over it is we have given what I believe is a very easy to use interface that can be looked at, could be given a view or access to from everyone from a CISO down to an incident responder, and then be able to get the data that they need from the platform. Whether that is, again, high level data or the ability to go in, look at the events, look at what's going on in the environment and respond from all within the XDR interface across multiple different security controls, which are all pulling back in. As I move across, again, looking from the bottom up, network, endpoint, email, you can read all of those. We're taking telemetry from all of the Cisco technologies we have, as well as multiple third parties, and I will talk about those a little bit. All of that feeds up into Talos, which is our threat organization. Again, I hope you've heard about Talos. I won't go into a pitch there, But I will say the Talos organization and what they bring to bear for our customers in the world in general from a threat intelligence organization is pretty good stuff if you've never taken a look at them. All of that feeding into the XDR platform, which underneath the covers, again, is using AI, is using, in some cases, depending upon what version of XDR that you go with or look at, um, actual people 24/7, 365 days a year, watching your environment with you and for you, and helping you respond and do things like threat hunting, forensics, and investigations. Again, mentioned the third-party interfaces. I'll talk about that, but the ability to pull in non-Cisco tools is something that we have done from day one. We will continue to build out curated integrations across the major security players into our platform. So again, we are not trying to find any way to lock you as a customer into buying more Cisco technology. Wish you would. That would be lovely. That's what Cisco pays me to do. But at the same time, we recognize that's not always going to be the case, and they're going to be, I think, forever, where integrations across third parties will be there. That said, I will kick to the next one. So when I look at third-party integrations, I won't read again all of these to you, but just know if you look at, and hopefully you can read, but I'll kind of name a few, under firewalls, Checkpoint, Fortinet, Palo, from Endpoint, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, again, Palo again, multiple different mainstream security vendors already fully curated. This is not something where you've got to go write APIs to get that actionable intelligence as well as integration to do things like block threats into the Cisco XDR platform itself. So what do we see as the advantage of our XDR? One thing I'll call out, and we obviously we're Cisco. We believe the network is key to anything. I will say the conversation I have around this with customers is security tools, again, no matter the vendor, for what they do, are fantastic. However, security tools can be stopped, they can be fooled. There are ways to kind of, at times, get around those, right? Whether it's a vulnerability in the product itself or other issues that our threat actors kind of use against us. The one thing you can't do is make the network lie about what's happening on it. So if that endpoint is doing things in the environment that it should not be doing, it's hard to hide that. If it's talking to places in the world it never has, if it is talking to different devices in your environment, even in your cloud environment, having that ability is something that we believe is key to building out a resilient cybersecurity infrastructure. And I point that out to say, because I think I may have glossed past it and didn't mention it. When you look at Cisco's XDR, it includes, which is kind of unique in the market at this point, at least, we include an NDR, so network detection response platform is a part of it. So some of you may be familiar with what we used to call Stealth Watch. Now it is Secure Network Analytics and Secure Cloud Analytics. We include Secure Cloud Analytics with the XDR platform. No matter which version of XDR you look at, it becomes the data lake for all of that intelligence from a network perspective, which you now can take and filter up into there, which is, again, going to be used to help prioritize and identify the threats that are real in your environment. On top of that, human intelligence on top of AI. I mentioned that again with the XDR Premier platform. It is actual Cisco people in our SOC who will be working, monitoring your environment, working with your team to help improve the efficiency of your environment as well as help in that response capabilities. Guided response, identity first. Again, we believe identity first, and we've made a number of acquisitions lately that we won't go into today around helping our customers secure identity. Identity is really the big place where a lot of focus is in security these days. Just know that, again, Cisco is stepping forward and I think leading the way with what we're doing with helping our customers secure the identity of their environment and then integrating that across our portfolio of security tools in our Cisco Security Cloud. So almost done, and that would be just talk about real quickly. I mentioned Cisco XDR comes in tiers or different packages that you can purchase. You'll kind of see this across a lot of Cisco's technologies today. We've gone with a 3-tiered model, which is the low end being essential, advantage is the middle, premier being the top. I'll quickly tell you what those mean. So Cisco XDR Essentials is if you are a Cisco only environment, Cisco tools are all you care about pulling into your XDR platform, then that would be the tool for you. 100% honesty here. I don't talk about essentials a lot because, again, I wasn't making it up when I said most of my customers are not 100% Cisco end to end. So that kind of leads me to where most conversations start around the Cisco XDR Advantage, which what Advantage does takes everything that I mentioned in Essentials, which is all the Cisco native integrations, layers on those third-party tools I mentioned earlier. By the way, there's a full list of those. If you just search for XDR on the web and you're like curious to the tool that I'm using today, Steve didn't mention it. Does it integrate? How does it integrate? Is it just for a threat intelligence perspective? We publish all of that, so it's very easy to find. But just know, again, you go to Advantage, you get third-party integrations. The one that I do have a lot of conversations about would be the Premier tier. Premier takes, again, everything Essentials, everything Advantage, and layers on our managed detection response capabilities, which I mentioned earlier. If you had a certain tier, which that would be Premier, you actually get Cisco SOC resources assigned to your account who will help in a 24/7, 365 follow the sun model monitor the security of your environment for everything that talks to the XDR platform. And again, I'm not just talking Cisco technologies here. So they're going to help you, whether that is a Cisco firewall or vendor ABC firewall or endpoint, from vendor A, B, or C. As long as it is taking that data into our XDR platform, that team is going to be able to action on that data with you and help you build out how you need to respond. Last quickly, doesn't really say it there, but if you look at the XDR Premier tier, we also include our IR services. So some of you may be familiar, Cisco through Talos has our Cisco Incident Response Service. So if you have an incident in your environment, you can have boots on the ground in some cases come in to help you respond to that in a timely fashion. Those services are built into the Premier tier, as well as access to take those hours, which are built out based upon really the size of your organization is how we build out, because it's kind of customized to how many users you have. How much hours you get as a part of that IR Cisco Talos services side. You can also use those services just like you can with an IR retainer that if you bought it a la carte today or have it a la carte, those hours are available for you to take and then use for other services like Purple Team exercises, cyber range training for your people. So again, a lot of goodness that comes with that.
Hey, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Quick question for you. You had mentioned that the Advantage tier is when you want to integrate with third-party tools, say a Palo firewall or a CrowdStrike or something like that. You need the Advantage tier. But if I'm not mistaken, security intelligence feeds, they just come even with, many of them just come with the Essentials. Am I correct on that?
You're correct. Again, when I talk about integrations from an Advantage perspective, and good call out, Pat, I appreciate you saying that. That would be full integration where, and Chris will probably kind of show this and talk about it, but let's say in that Advantage tier, and to your point, Pat, you had a Palo firewall and CrowdStrike endpoint. Rather than you having to jump off into Palo's interface and their firewall to go block a bad URL, I'll call it, or from an endpoint perspective to block a bad hash for a file, stop that file from propagating in the environment. You'll be able to do that from within the XDR platform. So fully integrated to both push policy in essence, or those kind of actions, as well as everything that you get in the Essentials, which would be pulling in security intelligence from Microsoft or whatever.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. And with it, that's it. Sorry if I went a little bit long on you guys, but now I'm going to stop sharing and let my friend Chris Ireland do probably what's the more exciting piece of this and actually show you the technology itself.
And folks, don't forget, got a question, put it in the chat window, or you can raise your hand. And I will try to make sure I see your hand up. But please ask questions. We got the smart folks on the call today.
All right. I'm going to share, and actually, so Cisco decided to upgrade my WebEx this morning, and I'm on a Mac, and it's saying, hey, I need to do some permissions, and I need to restart this. So give me 10 seconds, and I will be right back, and I will share my screen out.
Hey, Steve, I have a side question while we're waiting for Chris.
Absolutely, Pat.
We've got folks now who are purchasing security enterprise agreements, EAs. XDR now can it be part of an EA now or what?
It absolutely can. So Cisco XDR can be added to an existing EA if a customer has an EA. If not, it's definitely something that we can take a look at. What other, Cisco technologies, and candidly, probably most customers know this. We have now, in our current iteration of the security EA platform or buying model, we can do a single product. So in the past, sometimes you may have looked at it with your account team or me possibly, and them said, hey, you've got to have two technologies to get into an EA. That's no longer the case. So yeah, you can actually put that in an EA and do it as a single product if you wanted to, Pat.
Very
And
good.
I saw Chris is trying to get back in. He said he's a panelist again, so kick him back into or needs to be a panelist, and he'll be ready to go.
I will do that right now. Bear with me a second. Let's see, where's Mr. Ireland? Okay, Chris, you are now a panelist.
All righty, back in business. Let's see if this works this time. There we go.
And we see
Can you
your
see this?
content.
Good deal. All right, again, my name is Chris Ireland. I'm a technical solutions architect. I'm paired up with Steve Massey on the security space. I've only ever covered SLED customers. I've been at Cisco for 10 years now, but prior to that, I worked for one of the largest Cisco partners as Director of Information Systems, and I was responsible for the infrastructure and systems that we needed to run the business as a Cisco partner, as a systems integrator. And what kept me up at night was just making sure that I kept us out of the news. We didn't want to show up on the front page of the news and saying, hey, we just got breached. Because if we got breached, how are we going to sell solutions to customers saying, hey, we're going to protect you, we can't protect ourselves? And so lots of sleepless nights. I had a large staff. I had dual CCIE, dual security network CCIEs on staff. And the problem for us was like we had 6, 7, 8 different solutions. I had to pop into eight different consoles. None of them talked. Sure, we had a SIM, but even then, it's like, hey, if we were attacked, answering the questions of like, one, how did this happen? What's the scope? How do I stop it? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again in the future? That took a lot of time. And sometimes we couldn't even find the big picture. We were like, okay, well, we think we found patient 0. We re-imaged this box, but how did it even get in the first place? Were they off-prem? Were they on-site? Who knows? And so that's what this solution is here for. It's going to shorten the time to detection, and it's going to be able to detect an attack chain. And so each solution, let's say you got multiple security solutions in-house. Maybe you got, I don't know, Windows Defender on the endpoint. Windows Defender is only going to know what happens on the endpoint. Well, what happened before the endpoint? It doesn't have that information. It doesn't have that holistic view. And so like Steve mentioned earlier, what the core foundation of this is NDR, network detection and response. And so we can collect syslog information. We can collect your net flow, essentially anything that has an IP address on your network. We're going to have the whole phone book of your network. All of that information, by the core functionality, we're going to have visibility into. It's going to go into the data lake, and then we can apply Talos intelligence to that. Because, for instance, we may know something's malicious, but Microsoft Defender doesn't, CrowdStrike doesn't, your firewall doesn't. And we can do orchestration, and through API integrations, we can enrich that data and say, hey, this is bad stuff. Kick off an action to that third-party solution. But like I was mentioning earlier, each solution is only going to know what it sees. And so holistically, when we got data coming in here, Maybe your endpoint solution has an event, but it's not enough for that endpoint solution to say, hey, this is bad stuff. And maybe your firewall has an event, but it's not enough to say, in and of itself, this event in and of itself, it's not bad. It's not kicking up some alert to you guys. But let's say you got 3 different solutions, and in and of themselves, those individual events, that's not an attack. Well, we have all this feeding into a data lake, and we are applying thousands of indicators of compromise across that data, modeling it against our Talos intelligence, and we can say, well, hey, A by itself, B by itself, and C by itself, that's nothing. But A plus B plus C, that's an attack. And we can detect that attack, change, show it to you, prioritize it. And so I'm going to dig into this. When you get into this dashboard here, everything's mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This main dashboard is giving you kind of a holistic view of what's going on in the environment, but I'd say this is like your oh crap meter. So like you log into this console and you start seeing, hey, I've got some incidents associated with execution, defense evasion. There's lateral movement in my environment. There's credential access. We got some command and control. I'm probably going to check that out. And so I can go into these incidents, and actually Steve mentioned the integrations. I'll show you guys. So under administration, integrations, obviously all of our Cisco solutions are in here. Third party, so our business unit is onboarding named integrations. We're getting new ones about every 2 weeks. They're showing up. I was on site at with customers yesterday, and there was more in there when I went yesterday to check this out that I wasn't even aware of. So once every 2 weeks, there's more and more integrations coming in here. We got a lot of third party that wants to get associated with Cisco XDR. And so I'll just kind of quickly scroll down. You guys may see some stuff that you're running in your environment. But truly an open system, even let's say we don't even have a named integration yet for something you guys are using. This generic serverless relay module, so just because it's not named doesn't mean we can't integrate it. As long as that has the API access, we can use this module to get that make that integration happen. I'm just going to scroll down quickly here. Microsoft Graph Security API, Intune. If you guys are like Microsoft 365 customers, you'll be able to take advantage of a lot of that. ServiceNow is cool. We native integration with ServiceNow, so if an incident happens in our console, we can instantly populate all the necessary information to get a ticket open and assigned in ServiceNow with all the data enrichment that you guys are going to see in this console. So
Hey,
yeah,
Chris,
a bunch of stuff in here. Yep.
as you're scrolling, I'm going to be Captain Obvious here. And just remind folks, just be clear, this is a cloud-based solution. So, historically with certain types of, traditional security solutions, you had appliances that were on-prem. Cisco XDR is cloud-based. So I just want to, as I said, be Captain Obvious.
Yep, cloud managed console. The only thing, if you guys want to get NetFlow over, you would download a lightweight called a collector. You'd send your NetFlow over to that collector. It's going to encrypt the connection and shoot that over to the data lake here. So the heart of this is going to be the incidents. And so we've detected some attack chains in the environment. And there's 2 incidents in this demo console here. There's a priority of 1,000. And actually, this is where we kind of differentiate. I'll kind of relate it to endpoint security. So let's say you got, I don't know, CrowdStrike, you got Microsoft, whatever you got. It's going to detect a threat. And usually it's saying, hey, threat detected. Sometimes it's super generic. Sometimes it's going to give you the signature, we detected this threat. And if you're not living this and breathing this every single day, 24/7, you're just not living as a threat hunter. You may not even know what that means. You just see a signature and you're like, okay, what is that? And because it's a legitimate threat, it's gonna say, hey, this is a critical event. And usually they classify them like critical or 100. It's 100 out of 100 because it's a known threat. Well, a known threat could be that guy's spyware plugin on his Chrome browser, but it could also be a ransomware attack. And it's prioritizing those equally because they're known threats. Now, multiply that by 100 threats detected in an environment. What do I look at first? So our priority here, essentially, your endpoints, we call these things assets. So like an endpoint could be an asset. Your firewall is an asset. Your individual mailboxes are assets. And first we go in and you would assign an asset score. So this priority is essentially your asset score multiplied by threat severity. So for instance, your domain controller is going to have a higher asset score than, say, just somebody's user laptop. And so we go there, and if you ever want to test this stuff out, we just walk you through it. We give you our best practice recommendations and all that. So asset score times threat severity. But not only that, so this priority 1,000 out of 1,000. So the modeling behind it, Cisco purchased breach data from cyber insurance firms. And so 1,000 out of 1,000 would essentially mean if this particular incident goes unaddressed, this is going to cost your organization the most money. It's going to be the most destructive and the most impactful to your environment if you don't look at this one first. So rather than wasting time looking at that spyware problem, this is the one you need to check out. And even this this title here, this is all AI. So it pulled it all in. This is not something that like somebody had to go in and type this out. So credential theft and malicious process execution traced to an endpoint. Okay, cool. What's that mean? I click into it. So typically, again, I know when I was working for the Cisco partner, one, I'd have to try to figure all this stuff out and try to piece together the big picture, popping into a bunch of different consoles, trying to do that correlation. This is doing it for you. And so, one, you're going to get a short description. Basically, hey, high level, what's going on? You're going to get a long description, which is going to give you the holistic, this is what's going on. This is part of this attack chain. I'm not going to get and read all of this stuff, but you can see like, hey, I've got an endpoint reaching out to a domain controller, high level here, credential theft, malicious process execution, but it's running Metasploit against that. It's doing some command and control. We got some command and control. We got data exfiltration, all date, time stamped, order of events. Like this is actually the order that all this happened to build this attack chain. And so up here, if I want to view the chain, the holistic view from start to finish, what encompasses this attack, it's going to show you the chaining pattern. And so we have a lot of information coming in to the data lake from a bunch of different solutions where those solutions in and of themselves, it didn't detect this. It doesn't have that big picture. So first we saw persistence. This all mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Is going to tell you what that means. You don't need your PhD in rocket science here. You've got command and control. We have execution, defense evasion, credential access. Now, these are the indicators, and there's thousands of indicators that we're using, but these particular indicators were common across the information we were getting from all of your solutions. And we were able to detect this chaining pattern, and this was the actual order of this pattern. But we saw common IP addresses, we saw the domain controllers, there's more indicators down here. And down here are going to be the underlying events associated with the attack. So like if you got to get into the weeds and you want to get the information, all of that is going to be down here.
Hey, Chris, when you get to a good segue, I've got a couple of questions from the audience for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Right now?
Yeah, I'm loading up some stuff right now, so that's cool.
Okay.
That'll work.
So first question, can you do a differential alerting / notification per integration, i.e., can you have a snow alert for one type of low severity / operational event and then something different for a high severity alerting?
You can. And so we've got workflows that are built in. And the cool thing about our workflows is you don't need to be a programmer. So it's all drag and drop. You're going to start doing these integrations, and like our Cisco integrations are kind of like point and click. Even the third party, you're kind of pasting in an API key for like 90% of them, and then that's done. Now, once we have those named integrations and our Cisco integrations in there, you're going to have certain fields, drag and drop fields associated, already built out for for what that API allows you to do. So you can create these workflows to say like, hey, if I see this, then do this. And you can, the sky's the limit. I've got customers that do alerts. They want it to go to a WebEx Teams room, shoot an email, open up a ticket in ServiceNow, shoot into a Microsoft Teams room, shoot me an email, all kinds of things. And yeah, and you can have kind of this if this, then do that statements in there, and they're not even statements because you're just dragging and dropping in to build out these workflows. But short answer, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And another attendee as a kind of a two-part question. I think since this question was asked, you've answered it, but let's go over it real quick. Are asset scores determined by default from XDR? And
They
if
are.
so, yes. If so, can they be manually overwritten?
Yes. So across the board, every single asset initially has a score of 10. But no, part of the onboarding process, we want you to change those values. So we will go in and change those values for critical assets. Hey, our domain controllers, our infrastructure that supports the business or the organization, they're going to have higher asset scores than just say Joe user's laptop.
Gotcha. By the way, we do have one more question that popped in. Would you like to answer it now or later?
Sure. Nope, that's cool.
Okay. I've seen, this is one of the questions, I've seen TCP opens that persist for months before an attack is very slowly progressing. How long does XDR keep flow data for reference? Will it catch a long open TCP handshake?
So the minimum that you get included with the solution is we will retain the data for 90 days. And if you need it to be retained longer, there's SKUs for that. There's optional, there's add-on storage.
Gotcha. Yeah. My understanding is like you can add on individual storage, like one gigabyte per month per use, something like that.
Yeah, and it's actually not even associated with like a hard drive space allocation. We do it based on how many months of data do you want to store.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So
that's it all on the questions.
Yeah, and so quickly here, I'll show you as part of this attack chain here. Here's your alert timeline. So we've got these categories up here mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now, just this one thing, LDAP connection from a suspicious process. If I were to drill down into this, there's going to be multiple events associated with this. I mean, you could essentially be looking at 1,000 events just for one part of the attack chain if you were in the solution that generated those events. And it's like, well, how do I got to weed through all that, filter all through that. So down here, like these would be every single event that if you need the data and you got to get into the weeds, it's here for you. And so this was just one part of the attack chain, but you can see the level of detail. I got source IP. If we were to get into the weeds, this is the end user's laptop that got compromised. Destination IP is the domain controller. Source port 389. It already told us it was doing LDAP connections. It's running PowerShell. You see the command and control server here. So we've got all of the information, but really I'm going to pivot back to kind of the big picture when we're working this incident. So I'm going to view the incident details here. This is how we simplify all of that. Rather than looking at thousands of events and wasting your time and trying to figure it all out, we've already figured it out. It's all here for you, summarized. So one, it's going to build out this like Visio-looking diagram here. This is everything that's associated with this attack. This could have come from multiple solutions, but now you've got the holistic view. You don't have to guess how did it get into the environment, where was the start, who was patient zero. It's all going to be here. And so I've got endpoints associated with this attack. I can drill in. I've got, we called it victim. This is the victim's laptop. This is the domain controller. You can see the correlation. Hey, this connected to this. It actually is doing bidirectional communication. You've got the command and control that we saw in that one individual alert earlier. All of this is reaching out to the command and control server here. You've got some malicious processes associated with this attack. And you can see like every single one of these malicious processes. If I zoom out a bit, let me get rid of this over here. Every single one of these processes are actually reaching out to this command and control. You've got host names associated with the boxes. You've got the IP addresses associated with all this. I've got users up here. So I have user accounts. Well, what user was on the victim's machine? And so, yeah, usually I'm like, let me zoom out. You can kind of move this stuff around too. Let's move this around. So this user, so the administrator, that was associated with the domain controller. This account is associated with the box attacking the domain controller. But a nice like visual representation of what's going on. You've got all the assets associated with the attack. You've got the observables, and observables could be IP addresses, they could be processes, they could be files, the disposition, so if they're malicious, I could even pivot into things like virus total if I wanted to. And you've got the indicators, so the indicators of compromise. There's actually 43 indicators of compromise associated with this attack chain in the environment. So, okay, everything's cool. Everything's not cool, but it's cool in terms of I know what's going on at this point. Again, I've got the short and long description already filled out for me. If somebody asks me what's going on, just print it out. Here you go. This is what's going on in the environment, start to finish. So we get to the detection here. These are all of the events, again, that made up that attack. So imagine me having to go through 350 events in multiple consoles and different solutions to try to figure all this out. Now, all of these made up this attack, but are all of them important? For instance, what was important was that we had data exfiltration going out to that command and control domain. But if this usually a malicious file or process before it makes command and control, it's going to reach out to something legit. It's going to reach out, hey, can I ping Google's DNS server 8.8.8.8? Because if it can, it's probably in a sandbox. Because we know Google's always online. It's going to reach out to something like that. If it doesn't get a response back, it's just going to chill out, not do anything. Well, that would be part of it, but is that something I need to focus on? Waste my time on? So right here, I got 350 events. Show me the important ones. We just dropped that down to 60. So I just cut a sixth of time out of there where I don't need to focus on that other stuff if I need to see what's most important. And I can sort based on severity too. So I mean, there's 350 events. Some are low, but so you got high, critical, low, medium. I can, hey, just let's sort here. Let's look at the critical ones. Now really, so from here, now we got to let's take care of this. And so this is where the response and the orchestration come into play. This is like the cool part of the solution. And so this is all mapped to SANS framework for incident response. And this is going to take your level 1 SOC analyst to like a level 2, or even somebody with like 0 to no experience in doing incident response is going to guide them down the path from detection to remediation in making sure this doesn't happen again. So there's some guidance here. Review the incident. You can add some notes in here. Everything, any action that we take in this console, there's a full audit trail, which you can export all this. Analyze the indicators of compromise. Again, we've already done that. That's all going to be in the long description. But hey, if you want to check all that stuff out, add some notes in here that's going to be part of the kind of that final documentation when you close that ticket out. Cool. Identify the infected hosts. We already did that. It was those 3 assets that showed up. Confirm incident. Every single one of these buttons here, you can customize what happens. So, for instance, I click execute maybe in customer A's environment. Well, that's going to shoot an email to our IT staff distribution list. It's going to post all this information in a WebEx Teams room. It's going to open up a ticket in ServiceNow. You can have this thing do whatever based on the integrations that you have. Document and notify, same thing. Before I start on this incident, I kind of need that full holistic view of what's going on, everything associated with it. That would usually take a long time to craft all that up. This is a button click. Boom, done. Okay, now let's move on. So we got to get to containment here. Contain incident overview is just letting the analyst know, hey, this is what we're going to start doing. If you want to add some notes, cool. Contain the incidents. or contain the assets. So I need to isolate these boxes. It's doing command and control. It's running Metasploit against my domain controller. It's trying to harvest my directory and send credentials outbound to command and control. Let's isolate those so it can't happen again. Now, the integration that we're doing with this in here is our Cisco Secure Endpoint. But there's other third-party solutions that do it. CrowdStrike does it. There's other endpoint security solutions that do it. Execute. Done. I didn't have to go into that console and then modify policy in that console. It sent the command through the API to the other solution did it. Contain incident IP address, the IPs associated with this attack. Doesn't look like we have an integration set up. If we did, from here, I would click execute. Hey, I just blocked it on the endpoint itself. I just blocked it on my firewall. I blocked it in Cisco Umbrella Secure Internet Gateway. Everything just got blocked. 3 different solutions, I blocked the IPs with 1 click. Contain the incident domains. Again, for a Cisco Umbrella, we can do that. Execute. Just block that command and control domain on Cisco Umbrella. If they're on-prem, they're running our roaming client. Cool, we just blocked it. Somebody sitting down the street at a Starbucks. They're not going to be able to get to that domain anymore. Contain incident URLs. Right here was that command and control URL. Execute that. Blocked it on the endpoint. I just blocked it on my firewall. Just blocked it on my web gateway. 1 click. Just lock that down. And all these button clicks that I'm doing, all of this can also be automated. So if you have a certain level of comfort that says, hey, if we see this and it's critical, I don't want to have to click that button. Just get it done. Do it. You're able to do that. Contain incident file hashes. So in those list of observables, we saw a bunch of files associated with it. And if I click execute, you're going to see, hey, these are malicious. This is suspicious. This is malicious. This is not your solution that you currently have saying this is malicious. Windows Defender may not know that these files are malicious. Execute. They do now. Clicked execute through the API. We just told Windows Defender, hey, this is based off Talos intelligence. We saw part of the attack chain. 100% we know this is bad stuff. Defender may not have known. Hit execute, boom, just got quarantined off those endpoints. So you're getting data enrichment. Like, you may not be a Cisco customer benefiting from our intelligence. We're an ABC shop, anything but Cisco. We're running CrowdStrike and all this. Now you can get our Talos intelligence and enrich the solutions you already have. Identify vulnerabilities. Again, our endpoint security solution can do that. There's other solutions out there that do that. So I need to know what's vulnerable. Why did these things get attacked? Let's get a list, execute. I didn't have to go over there, start running scans. This is going to do it. You get the data back. We can see why it's vulnerable. And in terms of eradication, we're going to move on. It's going to guide you through it now. Hey, let's mitigate any of those vulnerabilities that came back. Remove the malicious content. Reimage the box. This is cool. We have a named integration with Cohesity. So with Cohesity, and they don't have it set up in this demo environment yet, but from here, ultimately, if it was just like Joe's laptop and we're like, okay, we get it, we're not going to really take the time. We're just going to reimage this machine. We already got all the information on what happened. We identified the vulnerabilities. We patched it. It's part of our golden image now. From here, you could reimage that box. The other cool thing with Cohesity is that we can do threat-based snapshots. So it's like, hey, we're starting to see some suspicious activity on this box. It looks like it could be the start of a ransomware attack. Let's go ahead and get an up-to-date snapshot right now before a confirmed threat or before this box potentially gets owned. And then you'd be able to restore it from here as well. So now we move on. We go to yes, sir?
Yeah, again, when you have a good segue, I have another question in the chat window.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Is there a single API call to pull all single incident related data that you're showing?
It's not going to be a single API. The dates, so through the integrations, the communication is bidirectional. And so we're going to have data getting fed into the data lake based off NDR, network detection and response. So we're going to essentially see everything. Anything with an IP address, we know. So we're going to know, like, hey, this IP address is associated with this endpoint. And if we need more information from that box, we can do requests. There's other named integrations that will do pushes, will push information into XDR as well. So it's bi-directional. It kind of depends on the integration, whether we're doing requests to get additional data, or if that integration allows to push data via the API to Cisco XDR.
Very good. Thank you.
So we're down to the recovery phase now. Validate the eradicated host and unquarantine the assets. Again, it's walking you through it. It's giving you the steps. I had isolated those boxes previously. I wanted to make sure that they could nothing could spread laterally, could no longer talk and do command and control. Everything's cool now. I've got everything taken care of. I need to let it back on the network. Let's let these things back on the network. Cool. Execute. Now, if you did re-image it, this would be an execute button if you had an integration. But yeah, validate the re-image host. But we also tell you manually, hey, these are some commands you can run to kind of validate that image. Implement recovery monitoring, and then finally you close that incident, close it out. You're gonna have a full work log of everything that happened, and you can drill down into this stuff too. You're gonna have an audit log. You can export all of this data from start to finish. You can even add, it was mentioned earlier, intelligence feeds. So in here, you can add your own custom indicators. You can add feeds. Maybe you signed up for some third-party feed. You're going to get Cisco Talos Intelligence by default. But yeah, I don't know, you signed up for Alien Vault, or there's a lot of free feeds out there too, and you want to use that as an indicator against the data that's going in. You're able to do that in here. But yeah, start to finish, shorten the time to the detection. This is really there to help uncover that 1%, give you the information that you need to understand holistically what happened, and then give you a framework to understand what happened, but eradicate it, recover from the attack, and then make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. If anyone wants to test this out in your environment, there's a couple ways you can try it out. We host several threat hunting workshops where you get access to it, your own demo console. It's got assets in there, an endpoint. We got email integrations where there's already infections. It's not your environment. And so we just kind of take you through from start to finish how you would respond to an incident with Cisco XDR. It doesn't cost anything. We can send out when those threat hunting workshops are, and if you want to attend it, cool. It takes about it's a 4 hour. It's kind of like it's 3 to 4 hours, so you got to devote some time to it. We can host them virtually as well. A lot of times they're on site, but we can do virtual ones. We can even do virtual ones specific for your organization. And then on the flip side of that, if you actually want to do a proof of concept with it as well, we will get you access to your own console, and we can help you with the integrations.
Hey, Chris, some guidance I have heard regarding deploying XDR, and I'm not just talking Cisco XDR, but XDR in general. But in the case of Cisco XDR, that one of the primary things you really do want to integrate, because we know that the value of an XDR to some extent, to a great extent, is based on the sources that feed it, telemetry. And so that one of the first things, and one of the most important things you want to integrate and feed into XDR is an EDR, such as a Cisco Secure Endpoint or a CrowdStrike or Microsoft Defender. Does that hold true?
For sure. I mean, you want to integrate where the common attack vectors are. Email is the number one attack vector. Web is the second attack vector. Your endpoint ultimately is like, what are they trying to attack? They're trying to get your data. They're trying to attack the endpoint. So of course you want to integrate that. But I will say our differentiator lies with network detection and response. Most other XDR solutions require an agent on the endpoint. But I've got customers that are still running AS400s. They got connected thermostats. They're running unsupported operating systems. They still got Windows Server 2003 boxes out there, still running Windows 7. you're not going to be able to put an agent on those boxes. Typically, vendors are going to say, hey, well, when the operating system isn't supported, we're not supporting it either. And those are the boxes that are most vulnerable because they're end of life and they're no longer supporting them. And so from a visibility standpoint, it's not going to matter because we're getting the net flow data, the IP fix data. We do have an agent as well. It's optional. Doesn't cost, you can deploy agents to get more visibility on those. But yeah, the differentiator here is network detection and response as core functionality. That's probably the first thing you want to set up. The second thing I would set up, because it's super easy, especially if it's a named integration, would be your EDR solution, or just if you just have straight up EPP, endpoint protection. Yeah, you want to get that set up. I would say email. You're on Microsoft 365. If you've got our solution, that's you got our email threat defense, or you got our cloud email security solution. That's point and click. That's still the number one attack vector out there is email. We process 40% of the world's email traffic. We see the most threat intelligence that come from email. Definitely want to get that set up. Get your firewall set up in there. But yeah, endpoint super, especially from an orchestration perspective, you do want to get your endpoint security solution set up in here, because ultimately, if we do detect a threat that endpoint didn't, well, we want to be able to tell that endpoint security solution, hey, that's bad stuff. Take care of it. Do what you can on the endpoint to quarantine or remove that malicious file or kill that process, whatever the capabilities are of that endpoint security solution.